Yep.
Down to the last one. So this is the Breeders with their album Last Splash. In the opening montage, you heard Cannonball, and now you're going to hear Do You Love Me Now?
Come back to me right now. Come on, come back to me right now.
Okay, so the Last Splash by the Breeders comes in at number 124 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 11 in 1993, number 716 of all time. It is the Breeders' highest rated album on Best Ever Albums. It's the only record tonight that made Rolling Stone's list, 293 there, and the Breeders are ranked number 463 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums. So yeah, this is their second album. We've actually covered either the Breeders or a member of the Breeders doing something else several times. We covered the Breeders' debut album, Pod, Season 4, Episode 6, earlier this season. Kim Deal was in the Pixies, so we've covered Pixies 3 times, Surfer Rosa, Season 3, bonus Episode 16, Doolittle, Season 3, Episode 30, Bossa Nova, Season 4, Episode 4, and we also covered Belly, who Tanya Donnelly was in the Breeders for a minute, and this was her band after the Breeders. We covered Belly's Star in Season 4, Episode 24. So lots of
crossover.
connective tissues with CTS here and these other albums. So Last Splash was released on August 30th, 1993. It's, as I said, this is their second album. They have a total of 5. Most recent is 2018's called All Nerve. 3 of their 5 albums came after their hiatus. So those bands that broke up for a while then came back. Genres, several in alternative rock, experimental rock, indie rock, noise pop, pop rock, surf rock, and grunge. Their highest charting album is this album, Last Splash. It hit number 33 in the U.S. And the highest charting single that they have is Cannonball. That hit number 44 in the U.S. And I'm not going to go through the beginning bio because John covered that when he covered Pod, so you can go back to that to get more info on that record. This album represented a couple of changes in the lineup. You've got still have Kim Deal on guitars and vocals, as well as Josephine Wiggs on bass. But after Tanya Donnelly left after the EP that came, there was an EP in between this and Pod. She left after that to go form Belly, and in her place is Kim's sister Kelly Deal on guitars and vocals, and they brought along Jim McPherson on drums. So they replaced their drummer. And kind of after the release of Pod, the members of the Breeders actually went back to their previous bands, and the Pixies released Bossa Nova around the same time that Pod came out, and they also released an album in 1991 called Trompe le Monde. And so the Breeders gathered back together in 1992. They record an EP called Safari, and that's the only Breeders work that includes both Kelly Deal and Tanya Donnelly, because she was still participating in the band at that time. I also like this. The drummer at the time, Britt Walford, was back again. He was a drummer from Slint. That he was also in the Breeders, but he billed himself.
Talking about that, yeah.
Yeah, but he billed himself not as his real name, Britt Walford, on that EP, but as Mike Hunt was his. I
was gonna say, wasn't it something like? I was gonna joke around and say, wasn't it something stupid like Mike Hunt or something like?
Sure
that?
was.
It actually
Yep.
was. Yeah,
That's
okay,
exactly
yeah.
what it was. Yep. So Jim McPherson's recruited to play drums. And the Breeders opened for Nirvana on their 1992 European tour. And they didn't last much longer. The Breeders played their last gig on September 5th, 1994 in LA for the Lollapalooza tour. And as John mentioned when he covered the bio for Pod, they did go on a hiatus after Kelly Deal was busted for drugs. But they did reform in 2001 and recorded Title IX with Steve Albini, and performed in an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in 2002. Also, John, do you guys remember, I did go back to the episode that we covered them. Do you remember the band that Kelly Deal formed when they were on hiatus? Do you remember who was in her band?
Oh gosh, I remember talking about it, but it's slipping my mind.
Yeah, it was a band with Sebastian Bach from Skid Row.
I was like, it was really bizarre people that I won't be able to piece together with deductive logic, but I knew it was, but yeah. I couldn't have got Sebastian Bach, but I knew it was something weird like that.
Yep, definitely weird. And in 2012, they announced they did announce a tour. I'm sorry. So when they originally reformed in 2001, McPherson and Wiggs were not part of that lineup. But then in 2012, they did announce a tour with McPherson and Wiggs both back in the band. They performed at Coachella last year in 2023. And right now, Josh, I think you mentioned this in the last episode, but they are opening for Olivia Rodrigo. At least they did a little bit last month in Madison Square Garden, and they're also going to open for her in her when she hits California in August. So there weren't a whole lot of details with this, the bio here that I could find, but we're going long enough as is anyway, so we can just go right into the reviews. John, what do you think of Last Splash?
Well, what do you think I think of Last Splash? This album kicks
love it.
ass. Like, yeah, it's like many of the things I like. I also love the fact that, for most of this album's like a pretty much a Pixies album, like a really great Pixies album. It eventually flips into, a song that's part Pixies, part Sonic Youth. I think it's is it Roy?
Roy,
That's
yeah.
the song like that. I love the fact that they just decide to put a great song like Driving on 9 on, which is basically like a Wilco song almost, like Uncle Tupelo or something. Like there,
Yeah.
it's like, well, that's bizarre that like there's like an Uncle Tupelo song just suddenly floating down there at number 14.
That is a cover song, John. Just so you know.
Is
that
it okay?
not,
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, it's,
Yep.
but you know what I'm saying? It's like this
Yes.
Americana song that's
Yeah,
just sort of
country
like,
kind of.
oh, this is like something out of like Matt's dream, portfolio
Heck yeah.
right here. Divine Hammer is a song I've known for a long time. Obviously, Cannonball. Who doesn't know
Yeah.
that song? But Divine Hammer is also another song that I've known for a long time. That's really catchy. I love that song because it's like the Pixies, but it's also got like a little bit of like Riot Girl energy in it. Even like Veruca Salt is another group that it sounds a little bit like. And when you think about like where Tanya Donley went, she's not in the group at this point, but like where she went, they're kind of all. You could see bits and pieces of the bands they were in, would be in, or where they go, and then the fact that they're playing around with genres along the way. And like I said, there's at the beginning there's the Slits and the Raincoats and all of those groups and that sort of feminine feminist energy that's there. There's some noise rock, there's Pixies, certainly alt rock. It sounds like an album from 1993 and 1994, and that it's not. You can see that it's influenced by like 80s music, but it's the 90s production is there, pushed back at times with just depending on how the song is going, something is shoved into the front, whether it be guitars in some songs or drums in others. It's not like like In Utero last week where you get that Albini production where the drums are just shoved forward all the time. I like the fact that it isn't the same depending song to song, and some of that is like what the song sounds like at different times. But yeah, this has all the stuff that I love. It's just these mostly short, catchy songs that they have a catchiness to them, but they're not linear all the time too. Sometimes the harmonies are big and bright, and more often though, you can understand the chorus, but the chorus isn't a traditional like huge booming chorus. It more sort of like sometimes it meanders into the chorus, sometimes it like explodes into the chorus, but not in a way where it's like chorus verse along the or verse chorus verse chorus. It isn't as directly linear as that. And I mean, this is sort of like pure alt rock perfection. I look at it as almost like a Lost Pixies album is kind of how I describe this album. But with the person from the Pixies who I often liked singing more often. And I'm very vocal about the fact that I really wish, Frank Black hadn't sung like some albums he was singing like every song, right? And like I really liked on the earlier albums the balance, with Kim Deal singing. And I think what really shines through is it's like, yeah, I like Kim Deal's voice, and I think it really adds to sort of the sonic palette of what the Pixies and transcends even from like the Riot Girl type sound that we've heard, a little bit in, Bratmobile a couple weeks ago and stuff like that. This is just a little bit more of a Craftsman or craftswoman, I guess we'd say in this version of that, where there's the rawness with it, but there's a polish as well, but not so much polish that it loses its indie veneer. So, I mean, yeah, really strong thumbs up in this. I like this album quite a bit.
Yeah, this album was I felt like I was on that playground equipment where you got spun around really fast and then you could like fly off if you didn't hold on tight enough, that they don't really have anymore. Like the centrifugal force pulls you off. I really wanted to like this album more. I was hoping to like this album more. I think I just have to give it more time. I think I was coming in from the feeling too of like what I felt when listening to Pod for the first time. I was like, it was just kind of like more daring and interesting than I expected. So I think I was coming into this album with that feeling, thinking it. And this album is definitely different and more expansive than Pod. I feel like they're really trying to branch out and try different things. They're trying different genres in here, or different rock genres. There's kind of like some surf rock in here. There's the country sounding song Driving on 9 like you talked about. There's also kind of like some more sped up like punk rock sounding songs and instrumentals. And I think also John brought up the point of like the way they structure the songs and how they come in at different times and don't really have like verse chorus verse type of structures at times. I think that threw me off as well. There's definitely elements of this album that I really like. Cannonball is kind of iconic, and that start with the chanting and then into the guitar, that's like is that a bass at the beginning where it
Yes.
goes dun, dun, dun? Yeah.
Yep.
That bass line is awesome. And that song is awesome. I really liked it. And I had heard it before, but it's been a while. And I really like Divine Hammer also. I hadn't heard that song before, and I feel like that's kind of just like this pop rock perfection type of song. And I like the speed of SOS as well, and Saints. I like that. That's the second to last track. So I did really like a lot of the songs, but then like it felt like every other song was kind of like, what are they trying to do here? Or like, where is this going? Or I can't really like get a foothold onto it. So I just kind of was confused at times, and I don't know what to attribute that to. I mean, the talent's there obviously, and I like the guitar and stuff, and so I don't know why. I was just having trouble finding why I wasn't responding as much. So maybe it's just the expectations thing, but I did like the album. I just didn't love it. I think I was just hoping to love it ultimately. And so it's like a thumbs up for me, but real question mark in some aspects. So
I think that take makes a lot of sense, Josh. And I say that kind of coming from a similar position in that, like, I had this album. I remember I liked Cannonball was kind of like this weird song, but it had enough for me to be like, okay, I like this. It's different, but it's really interesting and it's cool, and it's got a cool chorus. And I remember somebody like, yeah, that's a really good album. Like, it's really good. So I bought the album, and then I got it, and I was like, little kind of like your take now, like a little perplexed, like what the heck's going on here? Because this album is all over the place, right?
Yeah.
It's just they are doing so many different things with each song in a really short period of time, right? This is almost like it's like prog in some nature, because it's just like within a song that's 3 or 2 minutes long, it's like there's 3 or 4 different movements happening that are just like, how the heck does this work out? But I know sometimes we talk about albums like Jellyfish is a recent album that we covered not too long ago that I felt, man, it was a similar thing. They're throwing a lot at you, and it just seems like it's too much. It's hard to figure out what's going on. It's like, it's just overbearing, and it's like it's too much, right? But this works, right? And I think that for me, over the years, and certainly in this last week, after covering so many different artists and seeing the history and the lineage of a lot of these bands and whatnot, I really appreciate this, and I really like it. This is excellent. This is just so many cool things happening in this record, and it's not something that most people are going to get right off the bat. This is something this is a grower, right? It certainly was for me. So the confusion that you're feeling, I mean, it seems like you never heard this record before this week.
Right.
right? So so it totally makes sense that you're trying to digest 15, well, really 14 tracks, but there's 15 on it. Like one's the reprise of Raw, sorry. But it's a short album, but there's a lot of things packed in here, and there's all kinds of genres, and they're changing up the tempos and they're changing up what they're doing. It's just it's confusing, right? So, but I can tell you from experience, more you listen to this, the better it gets. The more you see into it, the more that things fit together, and it's just it is a very it's kind of a bold, record. It's there's there's a lot of creativity here. There's a lot of it's just interesting. It's just a cool, interesting record, and I really love everything about it. I think I love the instrumentals, like the flip side, you've got the surf rock thing happening there. SOS is another cool, just kind of instrumental. Mad Lucas is this weird song that's it's one of the longer songs on here, and she does this really weird effect with her voice, and
it's like dream pop a little bit or something.
But like demented dream pop, like there's something wrong with her. I really like Do You Love Me Now? That was kind of a standout track this time around, and I really like the way that starts, and it just goes in these different directions, and it builds, and it's a great record, man. I'm glad that we're covering it again. More things stood out here, and I think that this is I'm with you, John. This is like it's like another Pixie. It's another gift from the Pixies type vibe. And that's what really stuck out to me, though. It's just how expansive it is, how different it is, and how they're just throwing so much at you in a really short period of time. But the pieces are all falling together, I think, and it comes together quite well. So thumbs up from me.
Where it's like the Pixies is all the tempo changes, I think, which is what stands out to me. What it also is similar to, that I didn't mention in my take before, is it's sort of similar to some of those albums like the Minutemen or Husker Du or Wire, where they'd play all of these little snippets, and you felt like you were just getting in a menu of different sounds and takes on different things. And your first take is that, like you said, Matt, it can be like overwhelming to get all of these sonic palettes. But when I like most of what they're doing, like, you've got me then, because I'm like, ooh, now I feel like somebody dumped out a bunch of like mismatched Legos, you know what I mean? And I want to build whatever these things are, because I like all of the pieces, but I feel like I need to like figure out like how it comes together to me in album form, but I'm excited to do it. And that's how I felt about like Husker Du and Wire and Minutemen and group like that. There's some connective tissue with those groups, not exactly, sonically it's more like, a lot of the stuff we mentioned before, but I think it is similar to those late 70s, like early to mid 80s groups that are taking all of these chances, and it just really works for me. And I agree, Matt. I think this album, the more you listen to it, the better it gets, and I would not be shocked if this didn't grow on you, Josh, as time goes on.
Yeah, it's a hard album to digest in a week if you listen to 3, 4, how many times you listen to it?
Just twice.
Yeah, you need more than that. You need more than that. Yeah.
I do think it's easier to listen to, though, like having taken the journey, because like there's things you've seen before, and so I didn't have to digest quite as much as I did before, because I had more reference points. Yeah.
Well, and I had listened to it plenty of times prior, right? So it's like the first time I listened to it in a while, but like it really all came together this week.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, it makes sense. Nice.